الحمد لله رب العالمين، الصلاة والسلام الأتمان الأكملان على خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إلى علمنا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Inshallah, we'll continue with reading from the book known as موسوعة التفسير المأثور, or the Encyclopedia of Transmitted Tafsir. And we are approaching the end. We still have a little bit of time or a little bit of tafsir to go, but we're approaching the end of the tafsir of Surah al-Maa'on, Surah al-Maa'on, where Allah Azza wa Jal, He says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمَ وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. This is what we've covered so far from the surah. And what's left are the two ayat, الذين هم يرآءون ويمنعون الماعون. So we'll pick up with the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, where He says, الذين هم يرآءون. Those, describing those musallun. الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون. Those individuals who offer prayer but are forgetful or negligent, heedless about the time, or heedless in the state of mind that they have when offering prayer, heedless about performing it dutifully at the appropriate times, or heedless about how they perform it during its performance. So other than that, from which we mentioned from the tafsir of فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Now, Allah says about them and their characteristics, these musallin that He's describing, and we mentioned it from the statement of some of the Sahaba and Tabi'een, that the musallin that are intended in this ayah are the munafiqun, and that this ayat is not an ayat meant to describe the condition of the believer. And so we said that some of them could say that this ayat applies to the believer who falls into this category, or you could say that this ayat is applicable to the munafiq, and this is from the ayat that were sent down about the munafiqun, and it's not directly referencing the believer. And although the believer needs to be worried that he might be from the munafiqeen, and that he might be from those who receives a portion of this ayat, the reality is that this ayat is sent down about the hypocrites, the munafiqeen. And the evidence of that is what Allah mentions in the subsequent ayat when He says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءون. Those who are only, or those who show off, or who are attempting to be seen. Those who are attempting to be seen. This is their quality. Those who are the musallin, الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ, who are heedless or negligent during their salat or about their salat. They are only attempting to be seen. So let's look at the tafsir of this ayah, الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءون. They say, أن علي بن أبي طالب رضي الله تعالى عنه أنه قال من طريق مجاهد الذين هم يراءون قال يراءون بصلاتهم. Ali ibn Abi Talib رضي الله تعالى عنه, he said from the pathway of Mujahid regarding the statement of Allah, those who are attempting to be seen, he says, those who attempt to be seen with their salat, they attempt to be seen as performing salat, meaning that which motivates them and drives them to offering salat is that you could see them offering salat and say, look, they prayed, right? الذين إذا قاموا إلى الصلاة قاموا كسالى يراءون الناس. When they stand lazily, just showing off or attempting to be seen by the people. So Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he's saying يراءون بصلاتهم. They show off, or they attempt to be seen with their salat. say, and Abdullah bin Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنهما من طريق علي رضي الله أنه قال هم المنافقون كانوا يراءون الناس بصلاتهم إذا حضروا ويتركونها إذا غابوا. On the authority of Abdullah bin Abbas رضي الله تعالى عنهما, from the pathway of Ali Ibn Abbas, he said, this is about the munafiqun. This ayah, this section of the Quran, these ayat. فَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءون. He says, الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءون, these are the munafiqun. They used to attempt to be seen, or they used to show off to the people with their salat when they were around. When the people were present, the munafiq would attempt to be seen as performing salat, but they would abandon it when the people left, or if the people were absent. So if no one was around, the munafiq would give up his salat. He would abandon it. But if people were around, then he would perform it. And this is a quality that is of the utmost importance for the believer, that Allah makes his secrecy like his open, or like his apparent nature. The way that you are around others is the way that you want to be when you're by yourself. And they used to say that to do an action for other than Allah is shirk, and to leave an action for other than Allah is showing off. And so these are things that a person has to be conscious about, that we neither perform nor abandon actions simply for the sake of the people, but instead our actions, that the religion be all of it for Allah, mukhlisina lahu din, making our religion or our worship, our obedience sincere to him, pure to him, for him. And so we neither perform nor abandon actions simply for the sake of the people. As far as the munafiq, then he is the one who only considers the value that he gets, the credibility that he gets from his actions when in the presence of others. And this is something that the believer has to be conscious of and be wary of. Yes, we are conscious of the benefits and the harms that come from our actions based on different circumstances and environments we're in. فَنُرَاءِ النَّاسِ, their ahwal. We are conscious of the circumstances of the people that we're around, and our status amongst them, and their level of understanding, and their ability. All of these things we're conscious of, and we take that into consideration as it relates to the performance or the abandonment of certain actions. But that consideration is not a consideration specifically for the people. Instead, this is a consideration as it relates to the religion and the best ways to promote, and the best ways to implement, the best ways to execute that which Allah Azza wa Jal has legislated upon us in any given circumstance. And so there's a difference between being considerate of what the religion dictates and necessitates from us as it relates to considering the circumstances of those who we are around and those who we are addressing in the environments that we're in. There's a difference between that and between simply doing something for the sake of the people. And so these are things that need to be understood and need to be addressed, because very often we find that a person can fall into this showing off, doing something simply for the sake of the people, even if his intention was good to begin with. And likewise, this doing something for the sake of the people is also different than doing something because of the good influence of the people. And what I mean by that is that we find that in our environments, one of the things that we encourage is having good companions and having a good environment that you're a part of. And so when they get up to pray, you get up to pray. And a person might worry that this is showing off, but that's not the case when an individual is doing the action for Allah. But because of the good environment that he's in, it's an encouragement for him. Right? And they encourage each other with their statements as well as with their actions. And this is why the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they had an advantage over the later generations, because in their time, all of them were encouraging each other by their actions. And their environments were set up for them to thrive in the worship of Allah. So there's a difference between having a good environment affect you and impact you to the worship of Allah, as well as considering the circumstances of the people as it comes to your implementation of the worship and the religion of Allah. There's a difference between those things and between doing an action simply and solely for the sake of the people, so that it can be said that you did this or that you've done that. And that's with this word yurā'un, right? They attempt to be seen. They purposely try to be seen performing salat. There's no ikhlas. There's no sincerity. When the people are around, they do it. And when the people aren't, they abandon it. And they don't abandon it out of preoccupation or I have something else. They simply abandon it because they have no concern for it to begin with. As opposed to the person who might not pray the sunnahs, for example, when he gets home, but when he's in the masjid, he prays the sunnahs, right? He's not abandoning it per se, even if he's not doing the best thing possible by not praying at home. He's not abandoning it out of a lack of concern or care for it to begin with. As opposed to the munafiq who, when there's no credibility, no advantage for him in the eyes of the people, he has no concern or no care about the action in the first place. So all of these realities need to be understood so that the believer can protect himself from falling into the characteristics of the munafiq. نعم, they say an Mujahid ibn Jabr من طريق سفيان عن ابن أبي نجيح الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون قال هم المنافقون. They say on the authority of Mujahid ibn Jabr from the pathway of Sufyan, who narrated on Ibn Abi Najih, who narrated on Mujahid, he said about these ayat, those who are negligent or forgetful or heedless about their salat, i.e. to the end of it, he said they are the munafiqeen, right? They are the munafiqun. These people that the ayat is referring to are the munafiqun. And like we said, that's important to understand so that a person doesn't apply the ayat of the disbelievers or the ayat of the hypocrites to the believers, knowing that if this ayat was sent down about them, then there's no worry of stopping short when saying fawailun lil musallin and thinking that it's applicable to the believers. No, it's not applicable for those who establish the salat correctly, because this ayat was sent down about the munafiqeen. And it's important to understand those things so that a person doesn't use the ayat of the disbelievers when speaking about the believers. فَجَزَاؤُهُمْ جَهَنَّمَ خَالِدِينَ فِيهَا. Their compensation will be the hellfire. They will abide therein forever. A person takes this ayat that's sent down about the disbelievers and applies it to the believers, right? We have to know if this ayat was sent down about the munafiqeen, if this ayat was sent down about the kuffar, if this ayat was sent down in general, if this ayat was sent down about the believers, about Ahlul Kitab. Because when we understand those things, we know how better to apply the ayat and the context surrounding the ayat, so we don't take an ayat regarding the disbelievers and make it applicable to the believers. Yes, there are lessons that can be derived from it. And yes, there are cautions and admonitions that we can extract from it. But we need to be careful of taking something that is about the disbelievers and making it applicable to the believers, right? This ayat, according to these tafsir, is about the disbelievers, the munafiqun. Now, the next tafsir, they say, أن الضحاك بن مزاحم من طريق عبيد أنه قال في قوله الذين هم الذين هم عن صلاتهم ساهون الذين هم يراءون يعني المنافقين. الضحاك ibn Muzahim, he said, as was reported from the pathway of Ubaid, that the statement of Allah, those who are heedless about their salat, those who attempt to be seen, he said they are the munafiqun, or they are the munafiqeen, that this ayat is applicable to the munafiqeen. The next tafsir, or Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, he says, الذين هم يراءون الناس في صلاة يقول إذا أبصرهم الناس صلوا يراءون الناس بذلك ولا يريدون الله عز وجل بها. Muqatil ibn Sulaiman, rahimahullah ta'ala, he basically summarizes what we mentioned earlier. And so he says, those who attempt to be seen, i.e. by the people during their salah. He said that if the people are watching them, they pray, showing off by that towards the people. And they have no intention or no wanting of Allah with their action. They have no concern about Allah with their action. And so this is the distinguishing factor of what is showing off and what is not showing off. When the action is done for other than Allah, then this is riya. This is shirk. When the action is done for Allah via the motivation of something, then this is not shirk. If a person gets told, pray, akhi, and then they pray, this is not showing off, right? This is just the motivation that they needed to worship Allah. And so understanding the difference in how to recognize in your actions, when is it showing off? When is it riya? When is it shirk? And when is it simply a motivation or a wisdom that's being applied? And that's why shirk al-asghar is that sneaky, or a shirk al-khafi, the hidden shirk, because it can start off as motivation, but it can very easily transform into showing off, right? Somebody tells you to pray and you take the advice and you get up to pray. This is motivation. Somebody tells you to pray, and so you pray just so they can say, we saw you pray, and you don't have to deal with their admonition, their advice, or anything like this. Then this can be considered showing off. And so a person has to understand the differentiation between the two. Now, the next tafsir, they say, and Abdul Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam من طريق ابن وهب أنه قال ويصلون وليس الصلاة من شأنهم رياء. Abdul Rahman ibn Zayd ibn Aslam said, as was reported from the pathway of Ibn Wahb, he says they pray, although prayer is not from their normal lifestyle or circumstances or affair. They pray to show off, although prayer is not from their normal circumstances, simply to show off. So they pray, even though prayer is not something that is normal for them, simply to show off. And one of the things that's amazing, نسأل الله يعفو عنا وأن يغفر لنا وأن يرحمنا وأن يتقبل منا, especially after this month of Ramadan is over, we ask Allah to accept from us our actions and to make us consistent. These type of statements that Allah is revealing about the munafiqeen is at a time when the munafiqun used to go to the masjid for salah. As it was mentioned by some of the Sahaba, that, you know, nobody would miss the salat in jama'ah except a hypocrite who was well known for his hypocrisy. Ma'lum al-nifaq. As far as the general munafiq, then they would go to the salah. They would establish masajid, masjid al-dirar. And in spite of all of that, Allah is warning them about this action of being seen with their salah and abandoning it when no one's looking. And they would be the ones who would go to the salat in jama'ah, as opposed to nowadays where it's as if the munafiq, and unfortunately even some of the Muslims, لا يرفعون بالصلاة في الجماع رأسا. They don't raise any concern with praying in congregation. Yes, our homes have become further removed here in the West specifically. And yes, the masajid are further apart. And yes, the obligation to pray in the masjid might not be necessary upon certain individuals in our communities because of how far away they stay from the masjid. But is there a concern to, one, pray in jama'ah in your home, for example, if there are multiple Muslim males in your home and you don't have accessibility to the masjid? Is there a concern to make your way to the masjid at some point in time, to have a presence in the masjid? Is there a concern to establish a masjid in your neighborhood, in your area? The Prophet ﷺ, he commanded us that we build the masajid in the neighborhoods. All of these things are things that we should be conscious of because, and we were talking about this the other day, as Muslims, we need to be in a community. Nowadays, individualism has become what one might consider a type of disease, an affliction. All of us love to be individuals. We love to live far away. We love to live isolated. وَلَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, right? I'm not even trying to make myself as I'm the exception because we suffer from the same things that we talk about. But it's as if we all want to be separate and isolated, as if the community is not part of Islam. Just think about the term that we're known by, Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the people of the Sunnah and their group. We should be in communities, right? At Zakat al-Fitr, this is something that happens all the time. Nobody knows who the poor people are. Akhi, can you distribute my zakat for me? Can you direct me to someone? Because none of us are in communities. None of us know our Muslim neighbors or our Muslim brothers and sisters who attend the masjid. It's as if we come for Jum'ah, and that might be the extent of what we do. But as Muslims, we need to be in communities. We need to be part of a community. Somebody should be able, so many times we have sisters who have no wali and nobody knows about them. Or brothers who come to an area and nobody has reference because nobody's part of a community. And then we wonder why it's so hard to accomplish some of the simpler things in life. Work references, marriage references, business references, teaching and education. Who can we count on? How can we make sure our masjids are successful? Is there a group of brothers to set up on the Eid, to take down on the Eid? All of these small things that come from simply being part of a community. When there are 15, 20, 100 people involved in the masjid in any given neighborhood, then the masjid doesn't have the burden of it all relying on one person. There are 2 or 3 people to call the adhan, 2 or 3 people to lead the salat, right? There's this group of people who can handle opening and closing to where it doesn't become a burden or a job title or a position that needs to be hired for. And so being part of a community is something that's necessary.